Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio. So today, I am bringing you a game from the Athena Games City Championships in Norwich in the UK. Now, this is happening in the standard format. So we are going from the X and Y set all the way through till breakthrough. Breakpoint is not legal yet, but you can rest assured that when it is, tournament games on this channel will be very, very quickly coming along. Don't you worry your pretty little heads about it. Now, we are in 15 minutes, we are in best of 3, and I should say thank you very much to the lovely people at Athena Games in Norwich, definitely one of my favourite places in the UK to play. So sit back, grab yourself a nice beverage, and enjoy this game from the Norwich City Championships. Best of 3, 50 minutes, X and Y to breakthrough. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so on the right here we have Scott Simmons, local to Athena Games in Norwich. This is his turf. And on the left we have me, Ross Gilbert. I am going to be playing Raichu Bats, and Scott is going to be playing Mewtwo. And you saw me there taking a couple of mulligans, I believe, because Scott did mulligan at the beginning of this game. So I'm deciding my bench Pokemon before we start. And Scott has won the flip. Of course he did. I lost every single flip in the Swiss round today. Scott starts with a Mewtwo, and I've got a Pikachu in the active. I've got a Pikachu on the bench, and I'm not entirely, and a Feebas on the bench as well. So Scott straight away does what most people want to do in this situation. He goes for a Hooper EX. He is using that Hooper EX's ability to search for free EX Pokemon, or up to. And he's gone for a couple of Mewtwo's, and he's chosen to leave it there. Now, a lot of people in this situation may go for a Shaymin EX, but Scott is an exceptionally good player. He's already got his world invite sorted out before this tournament. So he is not going for a Shaymin EX because he recognises that, you know, I'm playing Raichu decks. And as we're going to talk about as this game goes on, I'm going to struggle to get a lot of KOs on Scott's Pokemon here. So the last thing he wants to do is fill his bench full of weak EXs, like for instance Shaymin EX, and give me easy prizes which are going to allow me to jump ahead in the game. I obviously would very much want him to get a Shaymin EX down, but it's just not happening. Now, this is the Mewtwo EX from Breakthrough that's got Scatter Shot and Damage Change, and he pops down a Shrine of Memory Stadium there and plays a Sycamore. Shrine of Memories, remember, allows you to use attacks from your pre-evolution. So Scott's Mewtwo deck essentially revolves around Mewtwo EX and Mega Mewtwo EX, and it's the Mega Mewtwo EX with Psychic Infinity. Now, the Mega Mewtwo EX with Psychic Infinity for a double colourless energy does 10 damage plus 30 for each energy attached to each of the active Pokemon. So if there's a double colourless energy on a Raichu and a double colourless energy on Mewtwo, that's 130 damage. But Shrine of Memories is in there so that he can use Damage Change. And Damage Change for a 2 Psychic and 1 Colourless allows you to swap the damage counters between Mewtwo and the defending Pokemon. So if I cannot one-hit KO 170 HP Mewtwo or a 210 HP Mewtwo, Mega Mewtwo, he can just Damage Change and heal it completely while KOing me, so I know I'm going for one-hit KO. So it's important for me to get a good setup here. So in this tournament, I'm trying to be good, I'm trying to be prudent, and I'm just searching through my deck, trying to figure out what's prized. First things first, I am using an Ultra Ball, and I'm going to use it to search out a Shaymin EX. Now, that Dark Energy could be useful because I could attach it to Pikachu and Nuzzle. Flip a coin if heads Mewtwo is paralyzed, but that's fairly irrelevant, to be honest. I'm expecting Scott to evolve to Mega Mewtwo next turn, and of course that Mega Evolution would cure paralysis. So I've had a look through there, I've got the Shaymin, and I'm going to use Shaymin's setup ability to draw more cards. The ideal situation for my deck here is I use Skyfield, a stadium that allows me to have 8 bench Pokemon. I go nuts with Shaymins, and then at some point Scott is going to put down Shrine of Memories. I will have to go back to 5 bench Pokemon, at which point I just discard my Shaymin, and I don't have those weak bench Pokemon on the field. So, I do have a looks like a double colourless energy I attached to Pikachu, I use an AZ there to pick up the Shaman, put him down, and use setup again. Now, it doesn't look like I've got a Skyfield there, which is slightly disappointing, and I've only got one Zubat down. Now, I'm going to be using Golbat. When you evolve, you get to place 2 damage counters, and then Crobat. When you evolve, you get to place 3. And I'm going to try and use a combination of a full bench, Golbats and Crobats, and maybe my single muscle band to start getting KOs on the Mega Mewtwo's. Raichu's attack, and that's obviously who Pikachu evolves into, does 20 damage for each of your bench Pokemon. So with Skyfield and a full bench, you're doing 160 damage for just a double colourless energy. Having said that, however, that's not all that, because remember that Mega Mewtwo's got 210 HP. So I'm not KOing that Mega Mewtwo next turn, because I've only got one Zubat down. Even if I've got a full bench, 160 damage, and a Muscle Band plus 20, and a Golbat plus 20, I'm still only doing 210 damage next turn, as Scott attaches a DCE, Mega Evolves, and then plays a Sycamore. What that means is I'll do 200 damage, and whereas against something like, a Mega Groudon or something like that, if I leave him with 20 HP remaining, not a problem, I can just use a Golbat next turn. That's not the case with Scott here, because he can use damage change because of Shrine of Memories with his Mega Mewtwo, and not only will he get the KO on the Pikachu, or the Raichu I suppose would be attacking, but he will completely heal in the process. Now, as it is, that double colourless energy will allow him to Psychic Infinity for 70 damage, so he's got the KO on the Pikachu already. Now, I'm not terribly worried here. I don't mind. Scott's going to get a KO every turn this game. I'm really not worried about that. The thing is, if I can just take an EX prize every turn from about turn 3 onwards, I'll still win the prize race. I don't even have to get a KO next turn. What I do need to do is firstly make sure those Shaman disappear at some point, but I need to take an EX KO every turn, and I can start on about turn 3, and I'll still win the prize race. That is my win condition here. Problem is, as I've already said, it's very difficult for Raichu decks to be hitting 210 in one turn. EXs you can do. Mega EXs are a problem. Scott there, you see he plays a Mega Turbo. That allows him to attach a Psychic Energy, or any basic energy, from his discard to one of his benched Pokemon. And there he just, that's a little bit of overkill. He does 100 damage there, easily enough to KO the Raichu. And because he played Town Map last turn, he gets to select his prize because they are now face up, and he can take whichever one makes the most sense. So I evolve the Pikachu to a Raichu, I get a second Raichu down, and I get a Golbat down. Now here, the prudent thing would not be to do 20 to the active Mewtwo, unless I'm going to do a little attack. What I really should do here is do it to the Hooper, or to the unmegaed Mewtwo. Now, doing a little bit of damage to Mewtwo isn't the end of the world. If I do less than 90 damage, I put Scott in a position where he can damage change to heal the Mewtwo, but he won't get a KO. Or he can get the KO and not heal it off. So, doing the 20 to the Mega Mewtwo here is not a bad idea, as long as I don't then do a big attack into the Mewtwo. And I am going for the unmegaed. The hope here is that he doesn't mega that and I get to KO it more easily, or that by the time he megas it, it's got essentially 190 HP, and that's much more easy to hit. You can see here that I've given up. We see a Floatstone on the Milotic. And what I did there was I used Milotic's ability to get a card out the discard. I got an AZ, picked up the Shaman, put it back down, and used setup to draw 6 cards. And I do get the Skyfield here. Now, there is potential here that next turn Scott whiffs the Shrine of Memories. He didn't take it out the prizes like he could have done last turn. And if he whiffs the Shrine of Memories, then he can't damage swap or damage change. Remember, damage change is an attack on the Mewtwo, not the Mega Mewtwo. So if Scott doesn't have a Shrine of Memories last turn, he's not going to be able to use it. Now, we know he's already used one because I displaced it this turn, and we know he's got one in the prizes. So if he plays 4, he's only got 2 left in his deck. So there is a possibility that he whiffs it here. Not a huge possibility, but there is a chance he whiffs it. Now, I get rid of an Evil Tau there, not ideal. Skyfield down means I want to fill my bench. But remember, I've already used a supporter. I'm not going to use a Lysander this turn. And I am not going to go ahead and, I'm not going to want to do more than 90 damage to the Mega Mewtwo. So this turn, I'm not thinking must fill bench, must fill bench, must fill bench. This turn, what I really want is to get a Zubat down. And I'm either going to go for a Shaman here or a Zubat. I've got 2 Raichu, both with a DCE, so I'm cool. And, yeah, there we go for Shaman, hopefully, to draw some cards and then get. Now, what I should probably do here is I should probably go for the Zubat. Because if I remember correctly, yeah, I've just drawn 2 Sycamore and a Raichu, and Trainer's Mail here. I could go for the Skyfield. I should be going for the Skyfield. I fail it. Now, both of them are bad moves on my part. Skyfield is integral to my deck. I need it. And I should have gone for a Zubat there. And here's why that was... And it's a big misplay on my part. And I'm willing to admit that. I remember this very clearly. I'm also recording the day after. Now, what I need to do... Okay. I wish I'd just retreated into the Milotic here. Milotic, I can afford to have it killed. He's done his job. If Scott hits Shrine of Memories here, he's going to heal himself and he's going to hit the Raichu. 2 things I really want this turn. Either use Oblivion Wing to put an energy on the field while doing 30, bringing him down to 180 HP and making it useless to damage swap. Or retreat into Milotic and just let him have an easy prize. What I don't want to do here is let him kill the Raichu, and if he drops a Shine of Memories, that's what's going to happen. Now, and there we go. So, good job, Ross. And there's the Psychic Energy. So now that attack has killed the Raichu and done nothing constructive. Had I got a Zubat down... Now, this turn, I could drop Golbat and Crobat, do 50 damage, which would bring him down to 160, which means full bench Raichu KO. That's now not an option. Now I need a full bench and my only Muscle Band and a Crobat to do 210. Now, that's possible, but it's much more difficult. And, of course, I don't have a Skyfield, which I could have got from the Trainer's Mail last turn. Now, my thought process, and there was a reason behind it, I knew I was going to Sycamore this turn. So if he doesn't hit the Shrine of Memories, I'm just going to have to, and I'm thinking whether I've drawn a card, because I drew a card and then Scott took a while to take his prize. I have drawn a card, I'm not going to draw a second. It was just a bit of a delay there. So, really 2 silly plays on my part. I should have got the Skyfield. Now, the risk is, if Scott doesn't have a Shrine of Memories, I've got to discard the Skyfield. But remember, if he doesn't have a Shrine of Memories, he's left with 200. He's left with 100 damage on. So I don't mind discarding a Skyfield. It's not a problem. The other misplay was getting the Shaman. First, I don't have a Zubat this turn, so I need the Muscle Band. And secondly... all I drew into was a Raichu and 2 Sycamores, both of which I've just had to discard. So 2 silly plays for me there. I should have got a Zubat with the Ultra Ball. And to be fair, if I hadn't played the Shaman, I wouldn't have drawn the Trainer's Mail. But then I would have drawn the Skyfield of Sycamore this turn. So 2 silly plays there. So I'm going to go for an Ultra Ball here. Now, I'm either going to need a Pikachu or a Zubat. If I attack with the Raichu, then I'm going to need a Pikachu to be attacking next turn. So 2 Lysander go down there. They're not the most important things at the moment. I need to take down that Mega Mewtwo. And what you see here is one of the fundamental problems with this matchup from my point of view. I need to be doing 210 damage to the Mewtwo. And if I don't, I ain't getting a KO. And... if I don't get the KO, he's just going to damage change and he's going to be fully healed. Now, I'm not playing this matchup perfectly. It's the first time I've played the matchup, but it is one of Raichu Bats' worst matchups. Now, your only two choices are essentially to go off like crazy, or another option is do tiny damage. Get an Eviltal doing Oblivion Wing for 30, which is what I'm going to try doing this turn, assuming I've got a Dark Energy. There we go, I am doing some things right. Because now I put him on 60 damage, which means he can damage change, but he's not getting a KO, which is good for me. Or he doesn't damage change, he gets the KO. Although he's going to be 10 damage short as it stands at the moment with Psychic Infinity. He's only... Oh, no, he's not, sorry, he's 150 because I've got energy on me. But now he's got an HP of 150, which means just a full bench with a Skyfield would get the KO here. So, I've not played this matchup great, but I'm not out of it yet. Now, the problem is, now that is the problem with doing little damage. Scott just used a VS Seeker to grab a Pokemon Center Lady to heal 60 damage. And this is the turn. Now, I can still win the prize trade if I get a prize this turn. If I take 2, Scott takes 1, I take 2, Scott takes 1, I take 2, then I will win the prize race. So this is the turn. I have got to get a KO this turn, or I'm going to lose the first game, and I really need to think about scooping at that stage. Now, you've seen there have been plenty of turns here that I could have done big damage. There's plenty of turns I could have used Raichu for 100, 120 damage, or even more. But the problem is, doing that damage in this situation, with my deck, I never want to do 90 damage. I either need to leave Mewtwo on 80 damage, i.e. not enough to damage swap and kill a Raichu, or I need to get the KO. They are the only two options. Now here, I will need a full bench, and no, so I can't get the KO. Full bench 160 plus Muscle Band 180. There are no Zubats or Golbats on the field. I'm not getting a KO. Now there is a possibility that full bench Muscle Band Lysander, I KO a Hooper, but the problem is, now you did see I've got a VS Seeker there. I'm not going to get the KO on Hooper, and Hooper's got a Floatstone attached. Now, I could double Lysander the Hooper to kill it, but of course, double Lysander in the Hooper here is a problem. So I VS Seeker for a Sycamore, I get 7 new cards. Honestly, at this stage in the game, there's no real way I can win this game. Now, I finally do get the Zubat. You can see my deck's thin. I'm not getting a KO this turn. What I'm going to have to do is retreat the Raichu, and I finally hit the Skyfield for what it's worth. Although, of course, we know that Scott can just take a KO and pick up the Shrine of Memories. However, we know that Scott's only got 1 Shrine of Memories in deck. So maybe I'm hitting 120 here. And this is a bit of a Hail Mary play. I'm not necessarily thinking this is going to work. What I'm thinking is, look, I can do 120. Unless he's got his 4th Shrine of Memories this turn, he can't damage swap and KO me. Now, he can still get the KO. And he can retreat and get the KO as well, force me to use a Lysander. But at least I can do some things. Oh, Xerosic comes down to get rid of the DCE, which is a little bit of a problem. Then he gets the KO. Now he takes the Shrine of Memories. Now, I've got a DCE in hand, but you can see that my Milotic's already gone down. And presumably, I'm going to need a VS Seeker for a Lysander to try and take out that Hooper in a subsequent turn. Scott here, for his part, all he needs to do is just Psychic Infinity when he doesn't have damage on, and damage change when he does have damage on. He's played this matchup very well. He slowed himself down a bit. You can see he's only about, and I scooped there because I've realised there's no way I can win the prize trade here. It's disappointing, but I'm just not going to do it. The first couple of turns in this matchup are absolutely huge. If I don't get some early KOs with the Raichu, I'm done for. What I really need is a couple of Zubat down early, and I need to get my Muscle Band. And I've split a sleeve there, so I'm just replacing it. What I need to do is essentially get in a position where I can do 210 in one turn. If I can't, I need to spend the first couple turns of the match picking away. Eviltal's a good plan, because even doing 30 damage, it makes it puts Scott in an impossible position. Either he doesn't get a KO by damage swapping, I'm cool with that. Every turn he doesn't get a KO gives me another turn to set up the big KO, or he takes a KO, but he's got 180 HP. 180 is not that bad for Raichu. Full bench and a muscle band, or full bench and a Golbat, and you've got the KO. EX decks, Raichu loves. Because like I say, full bench with Skyfield at 160, Golbat or Muscle Band, you've got the KO. Mega decks are the problem for Raichu. The good news is, well, that's alright. All you need to do is just 2-hit KO them. You'll still win the prize trade. And that's largely true unless they can heal. And it's the healing that makes this matchup so bad. The beautiful thing about Scott's deck here, and it's one thing he's doing really well, he's not playing Shaman. He doesn't need to play Shaman. If he can just get a few Mega Mewtwo's and some energy, he really is okay. So last game you saw, his deck didn't run lights out. He wasn't Mega Turboing constantly or anything like that. But he played just enough cards to keep his deck ticking over while controlling his bench very, very carefully. And doing that was absolutely brilliant for him. And like I've said, Scott is an excellent player. He's got his World's Invite already lined up. So why isn't Mega Mewtwo? Why aren't the Mega Mewtwo decks taking the world by storm at the moment? I say world, I mean our very, very small niche part of the world that is concerned with such Pokemon-related issues. And the answer is very simply Night March. Mega Mewtwo has an horrific Night March matchup. We see a mulligan from Scott there. So that really is a bad thing. Because Pumpkaboo is essentially doing 40 damage per Night Marcher, which means 6 Night Marchers in the discard, and bearing in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that you're going to have 4 of your Lampent you're going to discard straight away, because you put those stage 1s in there purely to discard, so you can do more damage with Night March. So, Night March, Pumpkaboo, with 6 Night Marches in a discard pile, does 240 damage for a DCE, as long as you've got Dimension Valley in play, which you often will, because you play 4 of them. And you're taking 2 prizes for 1. Night March, I mean, even Joltik can get the KO, though it's very difficult. So, yeah, Night March destroys Mega Mewtwo. So in a big tournament, Mega Mewtwo, it's not particularly viable if you think there's going to be a lot of Night March. But Night March hasn't been seeing a lot of play in the UK. Oh, and I'm Mulligan as well there. Night March has not been seeing a huge amount of play in the UK. Oh, and Scott Mulligan's as well. Night March has not been seeing a lot of play in the UK, and like I've said, this is Scott's local venue. So he knows he's here every week for League, so he knows the kind of decks that the locals like, and he knows his locals don't favour Night March. So he's feeling very confident that his locals aren't going to be playing Night March. This is a smaller cities. I love Norwich. It's becoming one of my very favourite venues in the UK. They are lovely to me, and they even give me a little separate room to record in. And they even, I literally this whole day, I just went around playing the tournament, and Matt Cotton amongst others, lovely people at Athena Games in Norwich in the UK. Not only did they let me record, they actually did the recording for me. They set the camera going, they stopped it, and they even on another mulligan here. Now, he is only playing 7 basics, to be fair. So you should expect 1 or 2 mulligans, but not this many. So, and they even gave me a list, round by round, of who was in the stream, or who was in the recorded games, and what decks they were playing. So literally, I just played the tournament. I set up at the beginning, played the tournament, and the lovely people at Athena Games in Norwich just did everything for me. If you're in the UK and you haven't been to Athena Games yet, you are a silly person. Get yourself down there. There's a reason I make an effort to go there whenever they have a tournament. Because I think this is my 3rd tournament of the year at Norwich. I think I've done 2 league challenges there, and this city's. So Scott knew there wasn't going to be much Night March. And another mulligan. And now, even though I mulliganed, we're up to 3. So I'm getting 3 extra cards here. And I finally get to go first because I lost game 1. And to be honest, I'm thinking here, well, this is not a good matchup for me. But it's Raichu. Raichu has got the beautiful thing where you can just fill up your bench and smash. Now, going first is also huge in this matchup. Because if I go first, that means that I get a turn to attack before Scott gets a Mega Mewtwo. I go first, another mulligan. I go first, can't attack. Scott goes first, can't evolve. I'm then on my second turn. I can evolve to Raichu. I can evolve to Golbat. And there is likely to be 170 HP Mewtwo. So if I can fill my bench and get one Golbat or a Muscle Band on turn 2, which is not unheard of for Raichu, not by a long shot, then I can get a KO and I can get 2 prizes up. And then maybe I can pick off a Hooper at one point and get another 2 prizes. Which means if Scott even plays one Shaman, I never have to knock out a Mega Mewtwo. So going first really is big. It's absolutely huge. And you saw in the last game, but then again in the last game I never particularly got set up. I never got my Zubats out, and I just, it doesn't help when you're playing a deck that plays 4 stadiums, as a lot of decks do nowadays. And we got another mulligan here. What we've decided is, now I don't know what the exact rules for a Judge Ball are. I believe there used to be strict rules, there aren't anymore. What we've basically decided is 5 mulligans is enough, as I just sit there and rip a sleeve apparently. 5 mulligans is enough. We're now going to do a Judge Ball, which is where the judge basically just goes through the deck from top to bottom until he finds a basic, puts it out, then we shuffle up and Scott draws an opening hand of 6, because otherwise we're here forever. So going back to why I'm not so fussed that we've taken ages to set up between games 1 and 2, I don't want to play a 3-game series here. I've already lost game 1. So what I want to do is sneak win game 2, and then not be able to finish game 3. And the rate we're going, there's a decent chance we aren't going to get a game 3. So if I can sneak game 2, I'm liking my chances. It would also help if Scott were to start Hooper or Shaman here. And he does! He starts a Shaman. It's really hard acting surprised when you played this game yesterday and it's really fresh in your memory. So I get 2 Pikachus and a Feebas down. I've got an Eviltal in the active. Now, thinking back now, and like I've said, I was not familiar enough with this matchup. I should not have started Eviltal. I should have started Pikachu. So I'm playing a level ball and an ultra ball at once here. The reason I should have started Pikachu is, like I've said, I want to be getting a big smashing KO on turn 2. So, if you think about it logically, Scott's not going to have a Mega turn 1 to attack. So he can attack with a Shaman, Sky Return, 30 damage. Or he can use Scatter Shot with Mewtwo EX. And I'm getting a Zubat and I'm getting a Shaman. I've already got a Skyfield down. So this is a much better start than I had in game 1. So the only attack Scott can do with Mewtwo next turn is Scatter Shot, 30 times the amount of Psychic Energy attached to Mewtwo. But here's the thing. Scott can only attach 1 basic Psychic to a Mewtwo. Now, he can... I'm just checking for prizes here, trying to see what's prize. Trying to be a good boy. He can... he can accelerate energy to a Mega Mewtwo using Mega Turbo, but he can't Mega Evolve on turn 1. So actually, and I didn't realise this until watching it back right now, most of the time, when you're going second and you can attack turn 1, Eviltal's your only good attacker on your first turn. So Eviltal's the card to start with. But here, I want to start Pikachu. Because one of the big problems is going to be for me next turn, I'm going to really want to KO that Shaman, or presumably Scott's going to Sky Return next turn to get the Shaman out the active and put something else in the active. Well, that's okay. Sky Return does 30 damage. That ain't going to KO a Pikachu. So, I want to leave a Pikachu in the active. Scott can do 30 damage with either Scattershot or Sky Return, don't care which. At which stage, I can just leave the Pikachu in the active. He's not going to be dead. And then I can try and get a big Raichu KO. And I can't do that because now I'm going to have to search for my 1 Float Stone to try and get the Eviltal out of the active. Now, look at my lovely bench, ladies and gentlemen. 3 Pikachu, 1 Zubat, 1 Feebas, and I've got Shamans in hand. So, here, what I can do is just start laying down Shamans, and one of 2 things is going to happen. Scott doesn't play Shrine of Memories, I'm hitting for loads of damage. Or Scott does play Shrine of Memories, and I'm going to keep my bench as Pikachu, Pikachu, Feebas, Pikachu, Zubat, and just discard the Shaymins. Now, I am going to bench the Zubat here, and yes, if Scott puts down Shrine of Memories, I'm going to have to lose one of them, but I'm getting set up here. I can afford to lose a Pikachu at this stage. I can use Milotic to get the Shrine of Memories back, or whatever. My point here is, and I'm doing a thing which I don't usually do, I'm getting a Raichu for next turn. I am willing to bet, given my setup and Scott's, I'm willing to bet that even if Scott plays a Judge, he ain't going to put it down this turn. So, look at that turn 1, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't get that last time, and I went second. This time, it's a much better start for me. But I'm still going to have that problem of the Mega Mewtwo's, and that's what I'm going to try and avoid this game. I am going to try and avoid ever having a KO the Mega Mewtwo's. I'm going to try and get a KO on something next turn, and then I'm going to try and get some KO on a Hooper at one point, and then I'm going to be rolling. Now, if I've got a full bench without Raichu, without Skyfield, it is possible to KO a Hooper, although it would leave, I would need kind of 2 Crobats and a Muscle Band. So doable, but difficult. Now, Scott here's got an Ultra Ball, and straight away here, he's going to want to go for a Hooper. He's going to want to use the Ultra Ball to get a Hooper. He's going to want to put Hooper down and search for, presumably, a couple of Mewtwo's, maybe a Shaymin, but that's difficult. Now, that is a bad discard on turn 1. Getting rid of a Mega Mewtwo and a DCE is not ideal on your first turn of the game. Although I was having an interesting discussion with Scott later on. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but it doesn't give away the result of this game at all. Me and Scott both made top cut, and we actually repeated this exact same matchup in top 4. We chose to record the other top 4 game because we didn't think the same match between the same players was good. So weirdly, we're in round 2 of the tournament here, but me and Scott are going to meet 5 rounds later to decide who makes the final. And the discussion we had, and his Hooper's prized, which is really bad. He has started Shaymin and his Hooper's prized. At this stage, I'm thinking I've got to steal this game. It's got to happen. So, one thing that Scott said, we're talking about prizes, but it counts with discard as well. If you've got a good, well-made deck, you should be able to look at your prizes every game and go, oh, I had really good cards prized. If you ever look at your deck and you look and go, oh, I didn't need those cards this game, you've made a bad deck most of the time. Or you've got really specific text that you didn't need for that matchup. You should always have good cards prized. Same thing with a discard. Every turn you should be discarding, okay, sometimes you can discard a supporter that you can later get back with VS Seeker, or you can do what Scott's doing here and discard a Psychic Energy that you can later get back with Mega Turbo. But even so, it's not ideal. But he gets a Shaymin, and from that he gets a Mewtwo. But we're seeing pretty much the opposite of game 1. Scott's now having a very bad start. I've had a very good start. And the differences between our starts is much starker. I didn't have a terrible start game 1. It just wasn't amazing. Here, my start has been amazing. And this is about as bad as it gets. Scott's had to put the Shaymin in the active. And this is what I was talking about previously. I've got a Raichu here. I've got a full bench. There is a Shaymin in the active. I've got a DCE. And now I'm having to Sycamore and trying to grab my one and only Floatstone. And if I don't hit the Floatstone, I am not getting the KO on the Shaymin. And this is a really bad play on my part. Now, the other thing I could have done is put a DCE on the Pikachu last turn, and then I could have retreated with a DCE this turn. So, this is a matchup for which I was moderately unprepared. You saw the misplay with the Shaymin in game 1, and you've seen the misplay putting the Evil Tal in the active this game. And I just want to confirm right now, I point out misplays wherever I see them on these videos, whether it's me or somebody else. So now I'm having to Oblivion Wing. Now what this opens up the possibility of is Scott now is going to be able to maybe retreat the Shaman with a Float Stone, and then maybe get a Mega Mewtwo and KO the Yveltal, and now he's rocking. Although, to be fair, I've still got a Golbat and a Zubat on the bench, and that Mewtwo's down 20 HP. Now, it doesn't look like Scott's going to go off this turn. The question is he going to be able to Sky Return? Or is he... Oh, okay. I was going to say, is he going to have to play the Shaman we know is in his hand? And the answer is, that's what he had to do, which is far from ideal here. So, Scott's struggling this game, and it is in no way his fault. He has been put in an annoying position whereby he's been given very few options. There's very little Scott can do in this game. Now, he's just looking at the retreat cost of the Feebas there, thinking whether he can stall with a Lysander. What he does do is play a Hex Maniac, which is going to stop me using Milotic's ability next turn, or using a Crobat or a Golbat. And he gets the Mega Evolution, but by doing that, he hasn't hit the Spirit Link, so he's got to end his turn. Remember, Mega Evolving does end your turn unless you attach the relevant Spirit Link. Now here I can attach a second Dark Energy and manually retreat, which I should never have had to do in the first place. And then I get the KO on the Shaman. And now I'm starting to feel quite confident, because this is a position I want to be in. I've got a full bench, I've got a Golbat, and I've got a Zubat down, so I've got a potential 50 bat damage before I even attack. Which means even a fresh Mega Mewtwo here, I just need a full bench with Skyfield, and I can Golbat and Crobat to get the KO on a Mega Mewtwo. So now I'm feeling quite confident, especially if that Scott's having to use Shaman here, and we see he gets some Mega Turbo to pop an energy on the Mega Mewtwo there. Which means now I'm feeling pretty good. Now, the one advantage I did have there was that I got to Oblivion Wing and put a Dark Energy onto the Raichu. But of course, if I hadn't left the Yveltal in the active turn 1, I could have manually attached 2 Dark Energy to the Raichu by now. Now, Scott does get the Psychic Infinity for the KO with a manual attachment. But here I've got a full bench. I must have a Raichu DCE in hand. Or even just a Raichu, actually, yeah. I didn't want to put the other Pikachu active because he's only got 1 energy on. Now, I've got a full bench. I'm doing 140. Add the, no, so I haven't got a full bench. I'm doing 140. With the 20 damage on the Mega Mewtwo, that's 160. So I need 50 damage. Now, that could be a Crobat and a Golbat. It could be a Crobat and a bench Pokemon. It could be a Golbat, a bench Pokemon, and a Muscle Band. But I need one of those combinations to come up here and get the KO on the Mewtwo. What I don't want to do is not KO it, because if I don't KO it, then he's going to be able to damage swap. I'd rather he had 2 damage on than had no damage on and my Raichu was dead. So I do get the Muscle Band there. So now I'm hitting 160. And yeah, I'm having to use Milotic here to use the ability to recover the Golbat. And I put a Zubat down, so I've got the bench. So now I can bite with the Golbat, and it's a very convoluted way of doing so. But Milotic to recover a level ball to get a Golbat from my bench to do the 20 bite damage, it's not ideal, but it got the KO. Now, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to save the Milotic for something like an AZ or a double colourless energy. Now, he uses a Lysander to bring my Milotic into the active. Now, that's got a retreat cost of 2. And there comes Shrine of Memories. But like I say, all I'm going to do is get rid of my Shamans. And I'm probably going to get rid of the Yveltal here because he's not doing me a huge amount of good. And we see a setup. Now, the question is, can I get the KO? Now this is where the Milotic would have really come in handy, getting a Skyfield or something of that nature. But we got 180 HP Mewtwo in the active, so... And Damage Swap is not looking likely next turn. He would need to get the Mega and he'd need to get the Spirit Link, the Mega, and 2 Mega Turbos, because remember, it's 2 Psychic Energy and 1 other. So Scott's only going to get the KO next turn, or at least the Damage Swap KO, if he's able to go Muscle Band, Mega Mewtwo, Manual Attachment, double Mega Turbo. Now, I've got the Raichu with the Muscle Band here, so with a full bench, I'm already doing 120. So with 2 Crobats, that would get the KO. Or indeed, I can just fill my bench. So there goes the Skyfield. And you have turns like this with a Raichu deck. I found it's really not an easy deck to play, because you've got to constantly be working out the maths and trying to figure it out. So now I'm up to 7 bench Pokemon, which means I'm doing 140. With the Muscle Band is 160. So I'm going to need a Crobat or a Golbat or an extra bench Pokemon. Now, there's a Level Ball. If there's a Golbat in my deck, and I'm not sure that there is, I don't know, I can't remember, but if there's a Golbat in my deck, I can use the Level Ball to go ahead and get myself a Golbat, and that will do the extra 20 damage. Or indeed, I could use a Level Ball to get another just basic Pokemon to bench. Now, instead, I go Sacred Ash, and the reason is, you can see, I've got a whole bunch of Pokemon in my discard pile. So I get a Raichu and then a whole bunch of basic Pokemon, including a couple of Shaymin. What I don't want to do here is use a supporter, because I've got an AZ. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. I had the KO. What the shaking around was, I was... sorry, I was miscalculating there as I was watching it back. I had the KO. Originally, I was thinking I'm going to have to Sycamore to get everything I need to get the KO. And then I managed to get everything I need to get the KO, but I was trying to work out the odds of hitting my Floatstone from using a Sycamore. And then a couple minutes into my thinking, I suddenly realised, hang on a second, I don't need to get the Floatstone, I can just AZ, because I've got enough to get the KO. Sorry, I had 7 bench Pokemon, I forgot I had the Muscle Band on the Raichu, so I didn't need the 8th bench Pokemon or the Golbat. All I needed to do was, because I had 7 bench Pokemon, no, I did need them, I don't know. The point is, I had the KO. I just needed to hit the AZ. So my apologies to Scott if you're watching this back. I did feel a little bit like a douche at that stage, because initially I thought I can get the Milotic out of the active using AZ. And then I started thinking, oh, I need all this stuff, I'm going to have to use the AZ to get a Sycamore. And then I managed to play a whole bunch of cards, and then I did have enough to get the KO, by which point I'd forgotten that I could just use the AZ to get the Milotic out of the active. So I've gotten my wish here. I've managed to sneak Game 2. I mean, let's be really clear about Game 2. It wasn't some masterful performance on my part. Scott started Shaymin, had Hooper prized, and despite using multiple Shaymin, which we know is not what he wants to do, despite using multiple Shaymin, he still never got particularly well set up. And I am willing to admit that although I think my deck's fairly consistent, it ran well throughout the day. As I've said, I made it to top 4 to face Scott again. And we see a mulligan from Scott, somewhat unsurprisingly. I made it all the way to top 4. My deck ran fine. There was only one game all day where my deck just completely just didn't work for me. But getting a Skyfield and a full bench, including 3 Pikachu and 2 Zubat and a Skyfield on turn 1, that is somewhat unusual, ladies and gentlemen. It is very much unusual. So, Scott's going to be going first here, and I'm going to be honest, I haven't put a timer up as I'm recording this video, but I'm willing to bet that we have very little time left. So, what I can do here is essentially play keep away. Just make Scott work for it. Make Scott have, he's going first, so Scott will need 7 turns to take 6 prizes. So make Scott go through those 7 turns. So one of the things I'm going to be thinking this game is, be careful on the Shaman. Now, depending how long's left, it could even be worth my while to just start benching basic Pokemon. I'm also going to want to go putting things like Eviltal and Crobat in the active. Now, what I could do here is go super hyper aggressive and try and steal a win, but that really works better when you're going first. The big problem is, by the time I've got a turn to attack with Raichu, which of course is what I really want to be doing, by the time I get a turn to attack with Raichu, Scott's had a turn to evolve. And I cut Megaphone from my deck for this tournament, and I mean, if you go back to game 1, I think there was one turn where Scott had at least two Spirit Links down at the end of his first turn. Playing a Megaphone at that stage would have been wonderful. Like I say, it's all about stopping the Megas. Something else that could have been useful in this game is a Jirachi, forcing him not to use those DCEs, buying me a turn or two just to get set up. Like I've said, the big problem here is you need so much to get the KO. You know, you're generally looking full bench plus a Golbat plus a Crobat. And yes, that is a Jurassic World phone case. I've got one of those annoying phones where it beeps when you've got a text message, and then it keeps beeping every couple of minutes until you check the text message. So, annoyingly, even though we're in the middle of a Pokemon game, I do have to grab my phone just to shut it up, because it gets annoying. I'm sure there's an option to turn that off, and if you know it, stick it down in the comments. I'm going to be honest, I've never looked. So already we see a much better start from Scott here. He had the Hooper, and he's played a Shaman, but Scott knows that one Shaman isn't going to be the end of the world. It's not going to be the difference between winning and losing, and if it's going to be, he can always just use Sky Return to do 30 damage and bring it back. So, you know, I'm going to have to KO, even, let's say for argument's sake, I get that Shaman. And let's say I get the Hooper. I've still got to KO one of the Mega Mewtwo and do all of that. Now we see a Battle Compressor coming down here from Scott. He's already popped a Skylar and a Sycamore in the discard pile. And the reasoning for that is very, very simple. He wants to reuse them with VS Seeker. Remember, VS Seeker is that, it's that and a Psychic Energy so that he can use Mega Turbo with it later. VS Seeker is that item card that allows you to grab a supporter out of the discard pile, put it in your hand. So a fairly common play here is just to, you know, use something like Battle Compressor to put them in the discard so that you can later reuse them. So what kind of a start am I going to have here? Now, I've got a level ball. That's quite nice. The other depressing thing is, and it is a depressing thing, because I'm going second, whatever's in the active is going to die on Scott's next turn. If I go first, I can leave a Pikachu or a Zubat in the active, knowing that Scott doesn't play Muscle Band. Why would you? Mewtwo hits for stupid damage. And I get rid of a Trainer's Mail and a Dark Energy to do so. So I know here, you know, if I'm going first, I know that Scott is limited to 30 damage on his first turn of the game. He can only hit for 30. So I can leave a Pikachu or a Zubat in the active, and then on my second turn, I can evolve them. Both Raichu and Golbat have free retreat, and then I'm rocking and rolling, ladies and gentlemen. I can put whatever I want in the active and go. But when I go second, as I'm doing so in this game, the only thing I can do is manually retreat the Zubat by attaching an energy or use my Float Stone. Or I know it's going down. Scott needs one Psychic Energy on that Mewtwo next turn, and he can KO it with regular Mewtwo EX's first attack. So I'm looking through for my prizes again, and I know it takes a minute or two, but honestly, ladies and gentlemen, it needs to be done. You're looking for things like, you know, I mean, let's take one example. Raichu is the heart of this deck. He really needs DCE to attack. So I need to look through and see, do I have all 4 DCE? And if I've got a DCE prized, then it tells me things like you cannot get rid of one with an Ultra Ball no matter how much you want. It means you need to get the Feebas down early because you're going to need to use Milotic to recover the DCE. And it also tells me that unless it's desperate, I cannot use Milotic to recover anything other than a DCE. Some of the questions that can be answered, doesn't matter. We have run out of time. This happens at 50 minutes best of 3. You rarely finish 3 whole games. Thank you to Scott for agreeing to be on stream. He is a lovely man. And thank you to Matt Cotton and everyone at Athena Games in Norwich. They are wonderful people letting us record. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to this channel. And yeah, look after yourselves. Check out my other videos. They'll be coming along shortly. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.